I'm going to give an artist talk that's not going to provide an overview of my work as an artist, but will just kind of focus on one project in particular. So this summer, I did an exhibition titled The Order of Canada, which is what I'll be focusing on. And the exhibition took place this past summer in two galleries. So at Mercer Union, which is one of the artist-run centers in Toronto, I did the exhibition The Order of Canada, and in brackets, I'll Be Your Mirror. And in the second venue, it's a gallery called Hearth. That's also an artist-run center, but not a publicly funded one. It's run by a group of 4 young and entrepreneurial artists. And the exhibition there was titled The Order of Canada, in brackets, I'll Be Your Toilet. So one exhibition, The Order of Canada, with this kind of two sides of the coin. I'll be your mirror, I'll be your toilet. So I'll start with Mercer Union. The show began with this piece. It's a series of 4 telegrams that together constitute a piece titled Show and Tell. And the telegrams each contain 3-line kind of stanzas or 3 stanza kind of sections, so that together they create one poem. So I'm going to read it out, and this kind of helped to establish some of the premise of the show. A mask now slipping, a veil briefly lifted, the shit that hits a fan. Shut up, move along, nothing to see, go home. A spell that is sung and spoken. The old, he said, will die, the young will soon forget, a shadow that has no feet. What remains comes to a head, whistles blow, fireflies glow, the dust that does not settle. So I made this piece as a way to kind of introduce this in a poetic way, some of the themes that I'm thinking about. You know, a kind of moment when a veil is lifted, when the shit hits the fan. Another moment when we're told almost in the voice of a police officer, you know, move along, nothing to see here. This kind of weird thing about a shadow that has no feet, and then ending with kind of the idea of the whistleblowers or the fireflies glowing that keeps the dust that won't settle. The kind of material of the telegrams initiated this idea of signaling that's you'll see as a kind of recurring theme in the exhibition. What does it mean to send out a signal, to send out a telegram, to be a firefly that kind of sends a little light in the darkness? So that's the first piece in the show. The second piece is just a photograph titled Roncesvalles Avenue, Toronto, The Tangled Garden. So it's a photograph on the street where I live, and it depicts a kind of, I guess, a derelict lot. I imagine this is something that you see walking around in Edmonton. This is certainly something that you see walking around in Toronto. A kind of piece of real estate that's been fenced off, presumably because soon there's going to be a development. But in that kind of in-between zone, the weeds have kind of proliferated and forms of life start to come to fruition. Although, of course, you know that as soon as the bulldozers come in, all of this life will be wiped away for the construction project to take place. But for now, we see these kind of weeds poking their heads through the fence and kind of asserting a proliferation of life in an inhospitable setting. The exhibition continued with a few photographs. It's a series of 4 photographs that I titled Moving the Museum, What Then Remains. And they were all shot in the Art Museum in Toronto, so the AGO, the Art Gallery of Ontario. This one has become a bit of like the kind of keystone of the project for me. It shows my finger pointing at an ostensibly blank wall. And underneath you see a caption in 3 languages, in Anishinaabe, English, and French, that indicate that this is a wall of that's part of the J.E.S. McLean Center for Indigenous and Canadian Art. And you might not be able to see it very clearly in the projection, but in the photograph, in the blank wall, you see kind of little traces of letters. Like they're impossible to read, but you can kind of see little glimmers or traces of letters. The whole exhibition project was initiated for me on an event that happened 2 years ago when the Art Gallery of Ontario announced that that Wanda Nanabush, its curator of Indigenous art, suddenly departed. That's their favorite euphemism. And she was departing at a moment when she was being feted and recognized and honored and awarded for everything that she was accomplishing in this short 7 years of working in the institution. So during her time there, the Canadian Art Department got renamed the Department of Indigenous and Canadian Art, a huge change. You can imagine how difficult and complicated it is to change that one word in the title to Indigenous and Canadian Art. She co-authored a kind of new mandate and a new collecting policy, organized massive solo exhibitions of Indigenous artists, including Rebecca Belmore, Robert Houle, Rita Latendre. So she accomplished so much. And in the middle of this, suddenly she's departed. Soon after this, an email was leaked letting people know why she is suddenly departed from the institution. So behind the scenes, there were attacks on her, and the institution decided to let her go. So in the face of these attacks, rather than protect her as an employee of the institution, they found it more convenient to let her go, keep everything under wraps, under non-disclosure agreements, so nobody would find out what happened. But luckily, this email got leaked, and so the community across the country and beyond was able to see what's happened. And this isn't a singular event. Events like this have continued to happen to this day. It's just on this one instance we're able to kind of see some of the machinations behind the scenes. So I became very interested when literally like a day or 2 days after Wanda left the institution, somebody emailed me and said, "Have you seen the wall?" And I was like, "What?" "The wall is erased." And so I went to visit it, and this wall used to have a large text in the 3 languages, in Anishinaabe, in English and French, that outlined the mandate of the new department. And the mandate was premised on treaty relationships and a nation-to-nation relationality, as April talked about, a relation of equality between nations, between First Nations and Canada. So not Indigenous artists kind of folded inside the nation state of Canada, but a relationship of equality between First Nations and Canada. So I visited this wall every day for a week after I heard about this and drew it, photographed it, did video of it, because you could still see the faint traces of the letters that used to contain this mandate. A week later, they came and whitewashed it, so they fresh coat of paint. You can hardly see anything. But for this brief moment in time, you could still see the traces. So once again, this idea of the signal, in this case, a broken signal or a signal that's being erased or silenced, but we can still see the erasure. It's not altogether been wiped out. This other image kind of draws back, pulls back to show the wall in context. And it depicts a school group of school kids, like on a tour of the museum, walking past. And one of the children has kind of turned and looks back at me, the photographer, and at us, the audience, establishing this kind of relationship with the image and with the scenario that we're looking at. But I'm also very interested in this idea of the passerby, right? Like, what's the relationship of these kids, of this classroom, of their teacher, as they walk past this wall that presumably looks completely empty? What's our relationship to this thing that we walk past that reads as empty or there's nothing there? What's our relationship to that nothing that is not quite nothing? So I wanted to kind of create images of that. As we continue through the exhibition, we see this piece titled The Stenographer, SOS. Do people know what a stenographer is? Okay, a few. Okay, cool. So a stenographer, I in my kind of fantasy life, I imagine it as that person in a courtroom. They're the one who's taking notes, right? Therefore, they write down everything that's said. The whole trial, they write down all the words of what's said. And they have a shorthand, like they have their because they have to type so quickly, they have a customized kind of typewriter, or they can also do it by hand, where they're writing down vowels rather than kind of individual letters, which allows them to kind of keep track of speech in the speed that it's spoken. And I was very interested in the idea of the stenographer, someone who's recording, but almost without any evaluation. They're not the judge, they're not the jury, but they're taking notes. And they're taking notes in a hurry, in a situation where something very important is happening very quickly, and the stenographer's job is to take notes. So I started to kind of understand the role of the artist, my role as an artist in the situation, as a kind of stenographer, someone who's also creating signals in this moment. So the piece primarily consists of two seismograms. So here's a kind of close-up image of a series of notes. As you can imagine, around the world there are seismic stations that are recording the movements of the earth 24/7 every day of the year, every year. You can imagine how useful this would be in order to kind of predict earthquakes or tsunamis or things like that. So around the world, there's seismic stations that are constantly recording the movements of the earth. In Toronto, there are 3 seismic stations, and these are the notes of me trying to find the seismograms from the 3 seismic stations. I'll go back to this image. So these 2 seismograms are from one seismic station, the Pickering seismic station, on 2 specific dates. This one is a reading taken on Thursday, November 16, 2023. And each of these readings is a 24-hour cycle. So this is 1 day kind of readings. And you can see each of these kind of segments stands for 1 minute, right? So the whole reading is a 24-hour cycle. And I wanted to find the moment at 12:15 in the afternoon when the email was sent internally announcing the departure of Wanda Nanabush from her job. So I highlighted in red the minute when someone hit send on that email. So this is the email, the staffing update from the AGO regarding Wanda Nanabush, its first Indigenous curator, now no longer in the institution. The second one is a reading 2 months later. Similarly, when they announced that Taklerick Partridge, their first and only Inuit curator, was also departing from the job. So for me, this sequence of events reads as a major earthquake. Like it really hits me and the community of artists that I'm part of. It's a huge shock. These are leaders in the field. They hold so much knowledge, and suddenly they're being kind of expelled or ousted from the institution. But due to kind of institutional silencing, non-disclosure agreements, there's no way to understand why this is happening. All the signals are being erased. And so as an artist, I thought, well, not every signal is erased. Maybe we can't expect the institution to tell us what's happening. Maybe I should listen to the earth and say, what did the earth say on this minute when the email was sent? Did the earth say anything? Maybe it didn't, maybe it did, I don't know. But there is a signal that remains, even in the context of all this silencing and erasure. At the end of the gallery, I created this kind of cul-de-sac. That's a piece titled The Red Room. It consists of 7 oil paintings on burlap, and some of the paintings are partially obscured with this fencing. I'm here in Edmonton as part of a conference on continental philosophy that's starting this afternoon. I'm going to give a talk on Saturday evening at the end of the conference, where I'll focus on this idea of red. I'm going to give a talk about thinking red thoughts. So if you're curious, please feel free to attend. I won't dwell on that, but I'm very interested in what does it mean to think red thoughts. Not to think about red things or to think about the color red, but to think thoughts that are red. That became extremely important to me. And this red room kind of creates a zone in the gallery, in the context of all this erasure and silencing, a kind of zone for red thoughts to take place. I should say a word about the kind of strange crack in the wall. It was very important for me to do this exhibition at Mercer Union because I knew that 10 years previously, Mercer Union had hosted an exhibition by the artist Dwayne Linklater. So Dwayne had done an exhibition here at Mercer a decade before. And one of the works that he did is he removed the drywall out of one large wall to reveal the metal studs. And he painted the metal studs with these kind of red shapes. So that if you stand back, the red shapes create a text that says, "What then remains?" in giant letters, "What then remains?" And at the end of the show, of course, the piece is drywalled again. And then you have another show and then another show for years and years and years. But I knew that the piece was still there behind the wall. And so as part of the exhibition, I asked Dwayne if he'd permit me to cut a slit in the wall, not to reveal the entire piece, but to reveal that what then remains, remains. That this piece has been sitting there for 10 years, whether we see it or not. What then remains, remains. I wanted to kind of create a conversation with his work, but also across time, that there's something about, there's some kind of signal process that is happening that can happen across time as well. And it's amazing to kind of, you peek through any wall. I mean, the wall of your home, the wall where you work, the wall where you study. What's behind the scenes, what's invisible and yet remains, so to speak, in the skeleton of where we spend our days in our daily life. So I want to kind of open up that dimension of what remains, whether we see it or not, whether we're aware of it or not. What's our relationship to that? Here are two more photos of that series that I mentioned earlier, Moving the Museum, What Then Remains. That's almost like two film stills. It's not a film, but it's almost like it's two photographs shot in quick sequence that shows a kind of sequence of events of this group of teenagers, some friends, I suppose, similarly walking past one of these erased walls in the gallery. And like in the other image, they're kind of catching our eye, establishing a relationship as they walk past this erased wall. We're kind of now almost about finishing the exhibition at Mercer with this series of drawings that are a little bit hard to see. They're titled, I call them the Fireflies. And it's a series of 14 typewriter drawings. So they're drawings made with a typewriter to create these 14 images. They are images based on wood knots. You know when you see plywood, sometimes the knot of the wood looks like eyes sometimes. And I started noticing these things, and so I took pictures of them just because they caught my eye. And I ran them through an ASCII program. ASCII is this kind of like obsolete computer technology from the kind of late 70s, 80s, where you could render a photographic image using characters from the keyboard. So letters and numbers and punctuation marks to create images, like almost like pictures. So I ran it through the software and then did the tedious job of typing them out by hand. It's very laborious and it's very intense because if you make a mistake, you might have to start all over again, right? It's not like you can just hit delete and keep going. It's a very kind of physical and material process that kind of commits you to the impressions that you've made with the typewriter. Unlike digital, where kind of you can erase it and there's no trace left of what you've just erased. You know, with the keys of the typewriter hitting the paper, you can kind of wipe out the mistake, but the mistake is still there, even in its wiping out. So that's what interested me about this technology of the typewriter, the fact that it creates an impression that you can't undo in the same way that a kind of digital way can completely undo it. And I wanted to spend time with these fireflies. Like I wanted to literally spend hours talking to them in this kind of weird Morse code, so to speak, this like non-English, non-linguistic code, sending them kind of signals. I'm writing a letter to the fireflies. As part of the exhibition, I hosted a reading group that ran for 7 weeks in the gallery, where we read a little book by an art historian named Georges Didi Uberman, who wrote a beautiful book titled Survival of the Fireflies, where he's talking about, the publisher of the book, kind of in the blurb, wrote that the book is about the bonds of friendship in times of fascism. And I think that sums it up really well. So it's a very poetic work of history and philosophy, but using this idea of the fireflies, these little insects that in the darkness emit a little light, such that as soon as you notice the light, they've disappeared already, but they reappear somewhere else. And thinking about this as kind of an idea of what some people might do in dark times, in times of fascism. I won't get into the nitty-gritty of the book, but it's quite a fascinating book. So for me, the fireflies kind of have something to say about these kind of signals in the dark. And sometimes those signals have to come in coded language, in language that's hard to decipher, and yet something's being transmitted. The last piece of the show at Mercer Union is this mannequin that I titled, What Can a Body Do in All Directions? So it's a kind of commercially bought mannequin that you can find in any store that shows a figure running through the room about to impact the wall or be impacted by the wall. So it's running right towards the wall. You can imagine it's going to hit its head really badly in a second, but it's doing it anyway. And the mannequin is wearing a hoodie that's been printed with an image of meat, red meat, raw flesh, to kind of connect these ideas to something very fleshy, very embodied. I'm going to take a break for now and just kind of ask if anybody has any kind of questions or observations or queries about any of the work that I've mentioned before kind of continuing. Oh, yeah.
So we're using the word signal.
Uh-huh.
Okay, there's something important in that.
Uh-huh.
Something you can say more. And the signal memory and time seem to be pretty important. And I think the firefly piece is maybe saying something important about like it's not information.
Aha, true.
It's kind of embodied and yet it's not. You're thinking something important about communication.
Yes. So let me rephrase it in case, just to make sure everybody heard your question. Correct me if I'm getting your question incorrectly. But the question is about signals. But I'm kind of pulling a very interesting and important distinction, that it's not signal understood as information, but almost signal understood as an act of communication, right? So not so much the data, the information that's conveyed in the signal, but almost a signal in its quality as a signal, as an act of signaling. And you're right. I do think that's it's a thread that runs through all of the pieces, right? The erase signal, with the kind of scrubbed wall, the signal that's kind of an almost archaeological signal. When I cut into the wall and find something inside, you can consider that as a kind of archaeological signal, a fenced-in signal, perhaps with the red paintings. The typewriter drawings that are kind of an illegible signal that's unintelligible at the level of language, but it's intelligible at the level of an image. So kind of image signal, so to speak. Yeah, it seems to me that so much of what we're witnessing, I don't know, I can't speak for you, but what I'm witnessing is the question of signals is up for grabs. I think there's a battle around signals right now. There's a lot of censorship and a lot of silencing, a lot of self-censorship happening everywhere I go. And the question of signals has now become a problem for us. What are we allowed to talk about? What are we not allowed to talk about? There's a lot of fear and anxiety about talking. And there are great risks that accompany the act of talking. And so these are some of the things that I wanted to directly deal with in this exhibition and connect them to national identity, right? The exhibition is titled The Order of Canada. There's an order, there's a fence, so to speak, that orders the red room. There's a grid that superimposes itself on the red, and I call that grid the Order of Canada. The Order of Canada is also that kind of award that some people receive once a year. You might have seen people wearing these pins. It's like a little white flower pin or something like this. So for people that are contributions to national something, they get awarded the Order of Canada. One of the people who attacked Wanda and got her fired received the Order of Canada a mere weeks later. A coincidence, but a meaningful signal of what the Order of Canada might mean to us.
I'm a design student, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on where the line lies in differentiation between design and art. Because from a designer's perspective, like I look at this and I see an exhibition room that's designed. And with the mannequin, right, I see industrial design and fashion design. And especially we talk about communication and signals, those are all just design systems, from my perspective. So I'm just sort of curious about, to you, where do you think that difference is?
Yeah, what a fascinating question. So I'm going to paraphrase the question just to make sure everybody can hear it. So the question is about kind of design and, the relationship between art and design. And there are design elements throughout the exhibition. The mannequin kind of alludes to fashion design. The installation itself has been designed. And so what's going on with the design questions in the exhibition? I'm glad to be an artist because I get to be a bit promiscuous, meaning I get to treat all of the world as material. I get to treat all of my experiences and the collective experiences that I participate in as my material, right? You can think that a painter, their material is oil, pigment, canvas. A sculptor, their material is wood or metal or something like that. Broadly speaking, artists' material is experience. And anything in the world is material. And design, the vocabulary of design, is simply another material that I can adopt or not adopt. There is a kind of design language in the exhibition. It's like two red things bracketing a white thing. It kind of looks like the flag of Canada. I was born in Peru, and the Peruvian flag is just like the Canadian national flag, minus the maple leaf. So there's a kind of design quality to the installation that alludes to the design of the Canadian flag or the Peruvian flag. When I was a kid in Peru, in school, they explained to us the symbolism of the Peruvian flag, which it's also a block of white and 2 blocks of red on the side. And it was explained to me that the white is peace, and peace is always bordered by blood. And so that's a design language to talk about the relationship between blood and peace. And so some of these things I think are material that I can engage with as an artist to put together an exhibition.
Thank you for talking about Wanda. I'm a professor here too, and I'm indigenous myself. But Toronto is a special place for OCAD and what's happening there. Gerald and I'm just actually emailing him right now.
Okay. Say hi to him for me.
Thank you. I will. But there is a cohesive network that's happening in Oak. Can you talk about that environment and how that, so especially with one that was doing, everyone was on Facebook and talking about when that event was happening. Could you talk about the environment there? Because,
In Toronto.
yeah,
Okay.
that's really important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the question is about the cohesive environment in Toronto, that's the broader context around what I've described happening around Wanda. Yeah, like OCAD University, so it's the Ontario College of Art and Design University, is one of the important hubs for Indigenous artists. Many people who work there, Bonnie Devine, and others have started an Indigenous Studies program. So that's a really important hub. And through a lot of advocacy, there's now a lot of very important Indigenous workers working in the field. It's very new too. Like the field really did not want them for a long time. So it's not there out of anybody's benevolence. It's there through a lot of hard work, which I've seen happen. And it's shocking to see how quickly all that work can be dismantled, can be attacked and just torpedoed. And this connects for me to a much broader networks. I mean, there are like national networks of Indigenous artists and curators who also organized around Wanda. And it goes internationally too. There was an open letter issued by a group of international Indigenous artists and scholars writing in support. So the networks overlap and the hubs overlap with each other. This has impacted a lot of people. It's not only Wanda, it's not only the AGO even, and it's hitting people across the board. So, I think part of the idea is that once you kind of erase the things, people forget, and then we can go business as usual. As an artist, it's very important for me that business is not as usual. The business is rotten, in my opinion. It cannot continue in this violent way. And so the more we speak, the more we signal to each other in whatever ways we are able to signal, the less we allow the dust to settle and business to return as usual. So long as the dust keeps circulating in the air, there's possibility, there's potential, there's transformation is possible. The moment we agree that the dust has settled and everything's back to normal, it means the transformation has been designated as finished. So that's why these signaling gestures are very important.
I'm very curious about your pictures about kids and teenagers. They really strike me. So you are interested in the relationship between your works and also this audience. So look at their face. When they realize you are watching them, they change their behavior a little bit, like at least there's some kind of eye contact. So I was wondering, when you observe them and when they are aware of the existence of others, does the relationship change in this dynamics?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. It's true. Like, I can imagine them, if I was them, I'd be like just walking in my own thoughts with my own friends. And then suddenly I realize, oh wait, there's a guy with a camera. And suddenly everything changes. That makes me think about the gaze, right?
Yeah.
The relationality that's activated by realizing, oh, I'm not alone. I'm under the gaze of someone else. Just like I have a gaze, they have a gaze on me as well. And that changes the situation. Suddenly I'm not in a kind of solipsistic bubble, in the bubble of my narcissism, as if I'm the center of the world. But the gaze of the other signals to me that I'm not the center of the world. Everyone is a center. We live in a universe full of centers. No one center can claim to be central in an absolute way. So that changes the scenario. That almost places a kind of demand on me. I'm changed. And this is what the Firefly drawings are doing. Like, I think as artworks, they're not there to be looked at. They're doing the looking. These kind of like wood grain nods, they're actually looking at the viewer in the gallery. They are points of the gaze, where the artwork itself is doing some looking as well. What are people doing here? How are they engaging with the work? What are they taking with them away from the gallery as they leave? The artworks themselves have a point of view on all of that. So I'm going to move on to the second part of the show. The Art of Canada will be your toilet at hearth. So at some point in organizing the exhibition, I realized it has to have two parts. It can't be in one place. I thought of it almost like it's like a coin that has two sides, right? It has to have two sides. It's one thing, one show, but it has to have two locations, two sites, two environments, two communities even. Each of these galleries have a very different audience, very different community. Hearth has a much more emergent artist community, a much younger community, a much more, in my opinion, a much more less established community than Mercer, and intriguingly more diverse in its makeup of like just kind of backgrounds and sexual expression and gender expression. It's a very different group of people. And I needed the show to speak in two ways in these two locations. I think of it also as the show at Hearth being the R-rated version of the show, and the show at Mercer as the PG-rated version of the show. At Mercer, it's what's allowable to say, if I may put it that way. But I needed the show to say the not allowable part of it, which also means it's harder for me to talk about. So I don't know what I'm going to say about it, but it's work that I think deals with kind of things that are less clear to me, less easy to pull apart. So this is the exhibition. It's a much more modest space. It's literally 4 young people who out of their own pocket pay rent to run this beautiful gallery called Hearth. It's on the second floor on St. Clair Avenue, like above a shop. They have a couple studio spaces in the back. It's a modest space, and this is a view of the gallery. At the center of the gallery, I have 4 mannequins, to allude to the mannequin at Mercer. These mannequins are not running, they're standing. I think they're almost having a seance or kind of holding a zone. What's that?
A ritual.
Yeah, there's a ritual. They're witchy. In my mind, they're witchy. Like they're holding a sacred space. On that sacred space is an SOS brand box of the scrub pads. But the SOS, right? Remember the stenographer and the SOS? Well, the SOS is here. And this exhibition had this kind of seance, witchy zone in the middle. And the artworks were basically 3 video installations. And each video installation, the title of them is a question. The show is 3 video installations framed as 3 questions. Here on the right is the first video installation, and it's titled, "Can the Monster Speak?" The video is it's rather overwhelming. It's a lot of video footage layered together, so it's hard to know what you're looking at. And the audio also has a lot of overlayered voices, so it's very hard to hear what you're hearing. And the two monitors are kind of competing with each other, so there's a lot of information, so to speak. There's a kind of overwhelming of signals happening. On the left, the video was composed using found video footage found online from primarily two sources. One source is PBS videos of this YouTube show called Space-Time. So it's this guy kind of talking about like space-time. So primarily like astrophysics, so like the physics of supernovas and black holes and, you know, giant cosmic incredibleness. And also talking about quantum physics, like smaller than small, like minutely small, smaller than atoms, and the weirdness of that. All of that's overlaid with another kind of footage, which is BDSM hypno porn videos. So they're hypno videos, so they're induction videos that essentially deal with like submission and domination and the erotics of that. So that footage is blended together. And on the right is a footage that often has my face giving a kind of speech. And it's a weird speech. I don't know what came over me when I wrote it, and I don't know what came over me when I acted it. But it's almost like a motivation speech. Like if you can imagine like one of those weird motivation coaches, you can do it. Yeah, go for it. You've got it. And I use kind of like those face filters to make me look weird. So here's like a filter that's making me look like an ostrich. You can see some of the filter. I've got kind of like plumped up lips and crazy eyes. And on the left, you see some renderings of kind of what happens when two black holes collide and how they they cause kind of time-space ripples to happen. So that's, can the monster speak? That's what I wanted to ask as an artist. Can the monster speak? Here's the second video installation. It almost takes the form of like a little furniture arrangement in a bourgeois home, like in the hallway or something like that. And it features, well, there's a mirror, but it also features these two little digital picture frames, one of which is showing an actor who's speaking using ASL. So she's using American Sign Language to speak. And the other one, the one on the right, is a cell phone video of the wall at the AGO. So you, once again, you see my finger pointing at the wall, and the video is kind of trying to read and track the broken letters. And this piece is titled, "Are You Talking to Me?" Can a monster speak? Are you talking to me? And then when we kind of turn back, on the right, there's a kind of weird thing, this gray monochrome that leans on the wall. It's a very special object for me. So a few months after the whole Wanda thing happened, and Tacleric as well, that summer the AGO workers went on strike. They were fighting for their labor rights, and the museum closed. And so of course I went to support them on their strike. And at one point I was talking to someone like in the picket line, and she's like, "Hey, did you hear about the sign?" I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about. What sign?" And she's like, I saw that you took pictures of the wall, and the installation crew that were told when they showed up to work to remove that text, they felt so bad doing it. They felt horrible doing it. And they saved one of the texts." And I was like, "What?" So I don't know who saved it, I don't know where it's saved, but I know one of the texts has been saved. They were supposed to throw it in the garbage, and they couldn't bring themselves to throw it in the garbage. It hurt them too much to do that. And so they saved it. So I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Later, I talked to the person who told me about this, and she was fired because of her labor organizing after the strike. So she said, I'm not allowed to go back, but I can find out some more about this sign. And sure enough, someone had stashed away the sign somewhere in the back, and a group of people managed to smuggle it out of the building, and they decided to give it to me to take care of this sign, of this signal, of this object. You know, they're risking themselves as well. So these are the fireflies, right? These are the firefly signaling. It's not organized, no one planned this, but the fireflies found each other, and this object moved from one location to another location as a result of the fireflies signaling to each other. So eventually they entrusted it to me, and I decided to incorporate it into an artwork. I thought the most suitable thing for me as an artist to do is to use it as material in an artwork. So I made this. I cut out a mirror to the exact dimensions of it, and I placed the mirror reflective side facing the text, so that what we're looking at is the back of the mirror. We're looking at just the gray, the back of the mirror. So we still can't read the text. The text is erased. It is invisible, but it's still there. And the mirror is still looking at it. It's still reflecting it. It's still cast its gaze on it. If we can't see it, it's still being reflected. And so I wanted that to occupy a space in the gallery, while this witchy sacred space is also occupying a space in the gallery. So yeah, you know what the back of the mirror looks like. It's just like industrial kind of printing of whatever, as it came from the factory. And this is the final video installation in the show. It's a simple kind of almost like a desktop setup with a computer, headphones, and this weird kind of red therapy light. And the piece is titled, What Can a Body Do? And it's a slideshow that I presented as a teacher. I teach at the University of Toronto. And a few years ago, I gave a lecture. I was teaching an introduction to critical theory class. And for one class, I prepared a class about the production of subjectivity and machinic enslavement. I'm using the ideas of Maurizio Lazzarato, this very interesting writer. And I decided to appropriate my lecture, my slideshow, and reformat it as a video piece in the exhibition. That's talking about kind of how social life is organized and how technology is one of the ways in which we organize ourselves as organs in a social body. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but that gives you kind of the three questions, right? Can the monster speak? Are you talking to me? What can a body do? So that's the show. Are there any questions about this part? So you can see the flavor of this other show is quite different from Mercer Union. The environment has no lighting except one red light bulb that I installed in the gallery. It's primarily video. If we were there, we would hear a kind of cacophony of audio and visuals and colors and stuff. It's less kind of monochromatic as Mercer Union was with the red and the white. This is a lot more psychedelic, if I may say, or trippy. So very different kind of temperature as an exhibition.
You mentioned something regarding thinking about thoughts.
Uh-huh.
Does that play more into this exhibit or the other? Like, do you want to talk about like the choice of developing or creating the exhibit?
Yeah, so the question is about thinking red thoughts. And the question is, does it apply more to this gallery than to Mercer Union? I think the red thoughts is something I'm trying to do in both spaces, right? With the red room at Mercer Union, obviously the red light bulb. Can the monster speak? The monster, I think of it as red thoughts somehow. So the theorist Spivak wrote a famous text called Can the Subaltern Speak? Right? Can the one whose voice is not legitimized as possessing the master's voice, if I may put it that way, whatever that person who does not get the legitimation of the master's voice, can whatever they say be rendered speech, right? Can the subaltern speak? Can the other speak, so to speak? Later, Paul Preciado delivered a lecture called Can the Monster Speak? So kind of jigging that in terms of like a transgender or non-binary gender speech. In all cases, I think we're talking about the one whose voice is not legitimized as kind of possessing the master's voice, either because it's the wrong gender, the wrong culture, raciality, education, body, whatever. And we can understand that voice as being the monster's voice. It's not the proper English, it's that other stuff. That other stuff that almost by definition is not proper, is monstrous speech, right? It's literally the other. The monster is the other, right? The monster is whatever we say is not like us, right? Because we're human, we're good people. The monster is whatever we designate as, that's not me, right? And so my question is, can the monster speak? In terms of red thoughts, I'm thinking, can we think monstrous thoughts, right? Can we allow ourselves to think thoughts that we would like to say, that's not me, I couldn't think that. I believe we all think those kinds of thoughts. And I'm interested to give them a name. I call them red thoughts. And I'm interested in thinking what happens if rather than kind of evaporating them, I didn't think that thought. What if I just say, I thought that thought? It's an experiment. I don't know what happens if I say, I thought that thought. But that's what I've decided to do. And to see what happens in a kind of collective invitation if we open that up as a possibility that we might engage in. So I think thinking red thoughts is happening in both spaces. I think the difference is that in one space it has a kind of R-rated version. In another space it has a PG-rated version. So the monster is more a parental guidance version of the monster. And here it's a more restricted version of the monster. They're both there. The red thoughts are both there. But the red light bulb is literally there. So, I mean, the red light is more real, so to speak, here. Oddly, the mirror is here. You know, the other one was called I'll Be Your Mirror, but there's two mirrors in this gallery. So it's kind of weirdly blurred. I'm trying to think red thoughts in both cases, for sure. It's two sides of one coin. I wrote a kind of promo blurb, if that's what you call it, for the show at Hearth. And I'm going to read it out to you. It adopts the 3 questions of the 3 videos. And it's a list of 30 phrases in 3 packets of 10 phrases. So this is the blurb, the kind of press release that I wrote for the show at Hearth. Are you talking to me? 1, save our souls. 2, stand over silence. 3, stop overthinking stuff. 4, seek out solutions. 5, sing out strong. 6, study open secrets. 7, stay on schedule. 8, share openly, sincerely. 9, simplify overloaded systems. 10, smell old smoke. Can the monster speak? 11, summon occult spirits. 12, seek, observe, stare. 13, select others swiftly. 14, snare ourselves. 15, scratch open scars. 16, strengthen overwhelming struggles. 17, slip outside sanity. 18, spread ominous shadows. 19, snap out suddenly. 20, shed obsessions slowly. What can a body do? 21, suffer ongoing strain. 22, survive or succumb. 23, submit or suffer. 24, sink or swim. 25, stumble over stones. 26, stand opposing storms. 27, shiver outside shelter. 28, stare over shoulder. 29, starved of stories. 30, scream out sorrow. Thank you very much.